Hey guys, what's up? It's Eric with Advanced Level Automotive. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. Today we're back here with this 2009 Infiniti FX35. It's got the V6 3.5 liter engine. Some of you guys might recognize this one from a video I did a few weeks ago. If you have not seen that video, I will leave a link in the description where you can go back and watch it. Make sure you do that before continuing with this video. That way you can be all caught up as far as where we're at right now. So if you guys watched the last video, you'll know where we left off. We pretty much came to the conclusion that we needed to replace the exhaust cam magnetic retarder. However, when we looked it up, they no longer sell just the magnetic retarder by itself. You have to buy the whole VCT cover. List price for that part was somewhere around $1,200. I mean, it was outrageously expensive. And so at the time, the customer did not want to fix it. However, circumstances have changed, things have changed, and now they do want to fix the problem. And so the vehicle is back. And so in this video, I feel like I want to do a little bit more troubleshooting. I feel like in the first one, and I think a lot of you guys might feel the same way, maybe I didn't do enough troubleshooting, enough checking, enough testing of components to be as close to 100% certain that replacing the magnetic retarder is going to fix our problem. Now, we did have a technical service bulletin from Nissan telling us that this is a common problem and the fix is to replace the exhaust magnetic retarder. We also had a bunch of forums where a lot of technicians were chiming in with the same thing. But when it comes down to it, you know, there are some things that we could eliminate to help us be a little more certain that replacing this part is going to fix our problem. Also, it's going to give us a sense that we did as much as we could as far as diagnosing the issue. So now when trying to decide what different tests we can do in trying to figure out what the problem is here, I came up with a couple different things. Number one, when we looked at the code description, we saw that it did give us a few possible causes, and one of those was an issue with the cam sensor for the exhaust side. It told us that we could look for debris buildup on the reluctor on the back of the camshaft, which is what the cam sensor reads off of. And so, I mean, that's one of the things that we could do. I think that we could hook up the lab scope, take a look at the camshaft waveform, determine whether or not it looks irregular, because, you know, if we have any type of issue with the sensor itself or the reluctor wheel, we're going to see that on the graph on the lab scope. We're going to see dropouts or glitches, something irregular in the signal. So that's one of the things that we could do, is hook up the lab scope, take a look at the cam signal, and determine whether or not we have an issue there, or if everything looks good, then we can eliminate that as a problem. The other thing that we could take a look at also is the duty cycle control for the exhaust magnetic retarder. Again, this exhaust magnetic retarder is controlled by the engine computer, and the way this works is that there is a power supplied to the exhaust magnetic retarder at all times, and the computer, its job is to ground the circuit in order to create a duty cycle signal in order to control the amount of magnetic force or magnetic pull that the exhaust magnetic retarder can create. And so one of the things that we can do is hook up a lab scope and take a look at the duty cycle signal. We can see, again, look for an irregular signal, look for glitches or dropouts, look for maybe whether or not we don't have a signal at all, because you know, as long as we have a good duty cycle signal, then we know that the computer is doing what it can to try to control the exhaust magnetic retarder. And so that is one of the tests that we could do. We have already done a resistance measurement check using the ohm meter. We did that in the first video, and we found that the resistance checked out well within specification. And so we know that test didn't really help us out at all. We also took a look at some scan data in the first video where I showed you guys where we had this kind of difference between the bank 1 and the bank 2 exhaust cam angle, and we can see that they weren't really following each other like they should be. And so that helped us determine why the check engine light was set to begin with. Now, since making that video, I have taken this thing on several different test drives, extended test drives, looking at the scan data. One of the reasons being is because I wanted the truck to act up on me. And that's one of the things that I am really fighting with, is the fact that I was never really able to duplicate the concern that they had. They said that the vehicle was stalling, having issues like that. But, you know, the only issue that I had was I felt hesitation every now and then when I go to accelerate, but it never really got so bad as to where the vehicle wanted to stall. And so that was one of the things that I wanted to see on the graph, the scan data, was what's happening when the vehicle starts to act up. When it starts to act like it wants to stall, are we seeing that the cam angles for the exhaust, bank 1 or bank 2, are way out of whack? You know, because that's going to tell us that, well, our issue does have something to do with the exhaust cam timing. I've driven it pretty extensively, and the only code that comes back is the P0024. And again, that's only for our bank 2. One last check that we can do, which would be sort of a last resort, would be to remove the VCT cover and actually take a visual inspection of the magnetic retarder. I'm not sure what to look for when it comes to that. I have read in some forums some very vague explanations as to what to look for, but again, that's one of the things that we could do. I'm gonna save that one for last because of course we wanna try the least invasive procedures first. And if we don't find any evidence there, then we're gonna go ahead and pull the VCT cover and take a look at it. Anyways, I'm done talking. You guys know how we do it. Let's get to work. All right guys, so let me show you the setup that I have going on. Over here, we have the lab scope. Now I am on 2 channels. The first channel, which is going to be this yellow cable, I have it connected to the magnetic retarder connector. So if you look at this back probe, you can see that it's probed into the yellow wire, which is going to be our control wire for the magnetic retarder. And if you look at my channel 2, which is going to be this green cable, you can see I have it connected to the camshaft sensor for the exhaust side. Now there are 2 different cam sensors on the back of the cylinder head. One is for the intake, the other one's for the exhaust. We're going to concentrate on the one for the exhaust because that is going to be how the engine computer actually determines whether or not the magnetic retarder is moving the camshaft into the correct position. And so over here on the lab scope, you can see that I have, again, the 2 channels. You can see the channel 1 is going to be this magnetic retarder. And right now, because the car is just idling, we don't have any command from the engine computer. So you can see this is just a straight battery voltage, which is about 14.2 volts, because right now the engine is running, it is idling. Then if you look at our cam sensor signal, you can see that we have these pulses right here. These are the square waves that the cam sensor creates as the reluctor wheel goes by the cam sensor. So again, on the back of the camshaft, we're going to have these teeth, and that is what the cam sensor uses to create these pulses. Now, looking at it right now while it's idling, you can see that we have a pretty clean signal. I mean, I can zoom out here. We can take a look at a 200 millisecond time base. You can see that we have our square waves here for our cam sensor signal. Again, we don't have any control happening right now on the magnetic retarder because of course we're idling. We're not going to see that control happening or the duty cycle signal occur until we accelerate the engine. But right now, just looking at the cam sensor, you can see that our signal looks pretty good. It looks clean. We don't have any glitches. We don't have any dropouts. We can probably zoom out just a little bit more. 500 millisecond time base. Again, you can see our square waves right here. Let me switch over the trigger to channel 2. Okay, so I've got the trigger on our channel 2. It keeps it steady onto the screen here. And again, you can see we don't have any glitches. We don't have any dropouts. We have a nice clean signal, indicating that more than likely we don't have an issue with the cam sensor or the reluctor on the back of the camshaft. But again, we really want to see what happens whenever we accelerate this thing. And so of course, that's what we're going to go ahead and do. We're going to move inside the vehicle, hit the accelerator, watch these signals, and we're going to look for any glitches or any dropouts, anything in the signal that just doesn't look right. So let's move inside the vehicle and take a look. All right guys, so because the cords for my lab scope don't actually extend to the inside of the vehicle, I'm just going to have to do it up here on the windshield. I'm going to stick my leg into the cab, and then I'm going to hit the accelerator with my foot. So pay attention to the graph here. Again, we're looking at the cam sensor signal down here, and we're looking at the duty cycle signal up here at the top. Let me go ahead and hide the cam sensor. That way we can focus more on this duty cycle. So let's go ahead and hide the channel 2. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more because we're at 500 milliseconds. So let's go into like 100 milliseconds. We'll look at this really closely. So let's move the trigger somewhere down there. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the accelerator. There's our duty cycle signal. Again, you can see a nice clean signal, and then it lets off. So let me back out a little bit. Let me go back to 500 milliseconds. Ooh, you guys hear that? Sounds like something's making some weird noise. What the heck is that? All right guys, so that is completely new to me. I have never heard that noise before. It sounds like it might be coming from either the belt or the fan. What the hell was that? I've never heard that noise before. And I've taken this thing on several test drives. Let me pull this cover off. What the heck was that noise? Let me shine a flashlight into those fans. Got my flashlight here. Let's take a look. All right, so at the moment the fans are not turning. Neither one of them are on. I'm not sure if that noise is coming from the fans or not. So we may have to activate the fans bi-directionally to see if that's what was making the noise, but I don't want to lose track of what it is that I was doing. So I'm going to move back to the lab scope. That is obviously of a concern, but I don't want to distract me from what it is I was doing. Okay, it just started again. Let me move back under the hood. Is that the fan? Yeah, the fan just came on. Okay, so that's the fans making that noise. Wow, those things are loud. Yeah, the fans just went off and the noise just went away. So definitely it's the fans making that noise. Again, we're gonna keep that in the back of our minds, but I'm not going to let that distract me right now. Let's move back over to the lab scope. I'm going to hit the accelerator. Duty cycle signal there. It goes away. I'm gonna let off the accelerator. Again, take a look at the scan tool. Here you can see where we hit the accelerator. It kind of flattens out right here. And this is while I'm holding the accelerator, and eventually it goes down to 0 even while I'm holding the accelerator. So it seems like it only pulses it for a while, but again, you guys can see that gap there between the two signals, so something is definitely off. Anyway, at this point I really don't see anything wrong with the signal here. I guess we could move over to the cam sensor on our channel 2. So let's go ahead and display channel 2. We can go ahead and hit the accelerator. Well, it's being masked right now by the duty cycle signal, so let me turn off the channel 1, turn off display for channel 1. Then again, we're just going to concentrate on our channel 2, our cam sensor signal. I'm going to accelerate it. I'm gonna let off. And there we have it, guys. You can see throughout the RPM range, we have a good clean square wave. We don't see any glitches, any major dropouts in the signal. So far, I don't think there's anything wrong with the cam sensor or the reluctor on the back of the camshaft. This is starting to look more and more like an issue with the magnetic retarder itself. I think at this point, the only thing left to do is remove the cover so that we can do a visual inspection. All right, guys, so we got the cover off and I've got it here on top of my toolbox. And as you can see, this is what it looks like, exactly like we described before. If you look at it from the outside, this here is the VVT solenoid for the intake side. And again, this here is the nose that sticks into the intake sprocket. And then over here we have our magnet for the exhaust VVT. Now again, this magnet, if you look at it, you can see that we have these two wires coming out through here, and there is this plug right here that is actually, it's got 4 pins in there, but really it's only 2 wires, so don't let that fool you. So basically this is an electromagnet, and that is what controls the exhaust camshaft variable valve timing. Now looking at this thing, I'm not really sure what it is I'm looking for. You know, I was hoping to see something obvious, maybe a bunch of crud on this magnet here. But I mean, so far it actually looks pretty clean. Now they do state that you should look at the plate behind the magnet, and so I guess what you're supposed to do is probably remove this and take a look at it, but this thing is not easy to remove. I can't just pull it out because there's a clip on the inside of this circle piece, and you have to shove something thin enough to fit in between the magnet and this round circular piece here in order to disengage the clip. Not have anything strong enough and thin enough to fit in there. Now, if you guys recall, in the first video, we looked at the bulletin for the Nissan Maxima, in which they actually said that you could replace just this magnet, and they used to sell just this magnet at the dealership. Now you can only buy the entire cover, but at the time the technical service bulletin said that this magnetic retarder was going to come with some pieces of paper, and so what you were supposed to do is cut those pieces of paper into 4, and they were designed with the specific thickness to fit in between this housing piece and the lip of the magnetic retarder. And so those pieces of paper, you would put them in 4 spots and it would disengage the clip here, and then you can actually remove this. But I don't have that because I bought the whole cover, and so I can't even figure out how to get this thing off. Unfortunately, at this point, I don't think I really can. Again, I was really hoping to see something obvious, but at this point, if there's a problem with this magnetic retarder, I just don't see it. One other thing I wanted to show you guys is if you take a look at the sprocket for the exhaust cam, which is this one right here, this is what the magnetic retarder works to move. And so if you look at it, you'll see that there's a mirrored finish around the sprocket. And so what they say is you're supposed to look at the mark that the magnetic retarder leaves behind and look for unevenness. So if you take a look at it, it's kind of hard to see, but if you point the light directly at it, you can see that there's a sort of white mark going around the center. When I look at this white mark all the way around, it actually looks pretty even. I know it might not show up completely on the camera, but to the naked eye, I can see this mark in its entirety, and it sure looks pretty even. So at this point, I'm not really sure what to think. I mean, I feel like at this point, I don't have any other option but to just go ahead and buy the part, put it on there, and just see what happens.
2 days later.
All right, guys, so fast forward. I just got the part. That is the part number for the bank 2. And so let's go ahead, open this sucker up. And they do a really good job of packing this thing. All right, guys, so here is our brand new VCT cover. Again, you can see that it comes with the solenoid for the VVT intake, and then it comes with the new plug connector for the magnetic retarder. Now they did put this bubble packing here to keep this magnet from falling out. And again, like I said, this thing's clipped in there pretty tight, so it doesn't just fall out. There you have it, guys. This is a brand new part, Nissan OEM. Take a look inside the casing. You can even see it does say Hitachi right there, so we know that this is OEM, because if you look at the original one, see that? Hitachi. I actually forgot to order a gasket, so I'm gonna have to run to the dealership real quick.
1 hour later.
All right, guys, so fast forward. I went ahead and I got the gasket at the dealership. In case you guys are doing this job, don't forget to order the gasket like I did. If you guys are curious, the part number for the gasket is right here. Just take a screenshot. Let me go ahead and install this thing, and let's hope for the best. All right, guys, so I've got the new part installed. I torqued it down to factory specifications. I went ahead and I reconnected both of the electrical connectors. Also, while I was down here, I went ahead and I cleaned up the grounds. Again, there's 2 grounds right here. There's a ground here, there's a ground down there. There's 2 grounds over here. So basically, I just unbolted them, hit them with the wire brush, cleaned them up really good, tighten them back down, made sure it was secure. Now we're ready to go. Again, you can see the contrast between the original one that we still have on the bank 1 side of the engine, and then our brand new part over here on the bank 2 side of the engine. Again, we only had a code for the bank 2, and so I decided to only replace the one side. Again, this part is very expensive, and to replace both sides together, I didn't want to take a chance spending a lot of money. I felt it was safer to just try and replace the one side, but I am curious to see how this side reacts to the brand new part over here. We're going to see that on the test drive using the scan tool. So let's go ahead, move inside the vehicle, connect the scan tool, take this thing for a test drive, and see what it looks like. All right, guys, so we're inside the vehicle. Now, before we can actually go on a test drive, there is a quick procedure that we do need to do. It's something that has to be done anytime you replace a component like we just did. And so I'm going to show you guys how to do it on the scan tool. Now, you don't necessarily have to have a scan tool to do this procedure. You can actually do it without a scan tool. It's very easy. But since we have the scan tool here, let me show you guys how it works. So we're going to go into special function, and then we're going to locate exhaust VT control arm. So let's hit this one. And now if you take a look here, it tells us that we need to make sure our engine is warmed up. We need to make sure that we're in park or neutral, and that we're holding our engine speed at 3,000 RPM. And so take a look, I have the engine on, it's running, it's idling. We've already come up to running temperature. And so I'm gonna go ahead and hit okay. That's going to take us into the test here. And so when we hit the start button, we need to make sure that we're accelerating the engine at 3,000 RPM. So I'm gonna raise the RPM up here, right there. So we're at 3,000 RPM, I'm holding it steady. And now we are gonna hit the start button, and this is going to start executing the test. So it's communicating. You see up here, it's executing, and just wait till it finishes. And there we have it, completed. And so we can let off of the gas, and we'll back out of the menu here. And then we're going to do like we did before. We're going to go into the data stream. We're going to go to all signals, and we're going to locate our exhaust, bank 1 and bank 2. Here we have it, exhaust valve timing, bank 1 and bank 2. And just like before, we're going to compare these two numbers. So I'm going to graph them. Now, something really cool that you can do with the scan tool is you can actually record. So I'm going to hit the record button, and then again, we're going to combine our graph here so that we're looking at both of them on top of each other. I'm just going to hit the accelerator real quick so you can see the graph, and there we have it. You see our red line and our blue line. Now, already just looking at this, it's looking much better. This right here is the scaling thing. So if you take a look, you saw how it just moved. Pay attention to the blue line and the red line. Our blue is at 5 and our red is on 10. So our scales are different here, and that's why you're seeing the difference here. This is actually the same. So let me try to update the graph here and get them both on the same level. I'm trying to scale this. You can see that even though it's 10, 10 here, you can see it's 0, 5. So I think this is going by 5s. Yeah, 5, 10, 15, 20. And over here, it's going by 10s, 10, 20, 30. And so we're off on the scaling here. So let me, oh, nope, that's not it. I think that's probably the most annoying thing about the graphing mode on the scan tool is that there really is no way to set the scales. I'm just accelerating this and trying to get them to line up. But yeah, there we have it. You see, we're 0, 5, 10, 15, 20. So now the channel 1 and the channel 2, the blue line and the red line are now on the same scaling. And so take a look at our graph here. You can see that every time I accelerate, we're pretty much staying the same. Now I'm going to hit the accelerator again, rev it up, and let off. Again, this issue with the scaling, you see how we just jumped? You can see we're at 0 over here on the blue line and 10 over here. And so that's getting to be kind of annoying, but I'm not really sure how to fix that issue. Now there is this gesture scaling, but that's different. We can basically zoom in and out by you know, using our 2 fingers. But really, I don't think that helps us unless we can scale upward or downward. Yeah, there we go. No, but they're still staying on different scales. I'm just trying to get them on the same scale here. Is there a way to do that? All right, guys, so as annoying as this scaling issue is, I'm not going to let this deter me from going on my test drive. I'm basically going to drive it until eventually these two match up on the scale here. And so then we can really compare the two side by side. So let me go ahead and take this thing for a test drive. I'm going to have this thing continuously recording, and then we're going to take a look back at our recording and see how these two are reacting to each other. You can see that this actually just updated. So here we have it, 0, 0, 5, 5, 10, 10. Now we're on the same scale. And so hopefully it can stay this way while I'm driving it. I wish there was a way for me to just lock it on this scale here, but there really isn't. So let's go ahead and continue with this test drive, and then we'll come back and take a look at this graph. So here we are on the test drive. Again, I've got the scan tool over here on the seat, and I am recording both of our data PIDs. Now, I do want to make sure to drive extensively enough to allow any learning that needs to happen. Again, we just replaced the part with the brand new one. The old one is going to have to adjust, I'm assuming, to the way this one is working. And so, you know, I'm going to give it some time before I start judging the graph. I'm going to drive for at least 15 minutes or so before I actually start paying attention to the graph on the scan tool, just to give it some time to, you know, finesse things out. Then we can critique what's going on. But for now, let's go ahead and continue our test drive and see what happens.
A few moments later.
All right, guys, so I've been driving now for about 25 minutes, actually. Let's take a look at the scan tool over on the seat here. Already, the signal looks much better. You can see that they're following each other really closely, a lot closer than they were before. I'm slowing down right now, coming into a little turnaround right here, so waiting for the cars to go by, and then focus you in on the graph here. I'm gonna go ahead and pull over, and let's take a look at this in detail. All right, guys, so we're parked. Let's go ahead and take a look at our recording. And to do that on the scan tool, we're gonna go to user info. And if you look up here, you can see recorded data. So we're gonna go ahead and click on that. Now, the one that we just took is this FX35 after. That's what I named it. I'm using custom names here. This FX35 here, this is the one that I recorded before doing the repair, and this is the one after doing the repair. So let's go ahead and click on this and highlight the two data PIDs that we recorded, hit OK. There we have it. We're gonna go ahead and hit graph, and let's go ahead and combine the two. Now the playback on this is a little bit slow, so we're gonna go ahead and just kind of scrub through and try to find what it is we're looking for. Again, this is at the beginning where I had this issue where the scaling was off. You can see that on the blue we're 20 over here and 10 over here on the red, and so that's why you see this big gap here. But if I move forward, you're going to see where our scaling adjusted right about there. And so here we have our scaling 0 0 5 5 10 10 15 15. So you can see we're on the correct scale on both of them. And take a look at this graph. Now what's interesting is that I noticed when I first go to accelerate, I do see these swings here on the blue line. Again, our blue line here is going to be our bank one. That's our old one. But take a look at our red line here, the bank two. It's actually pretty straight. Now, one really cool thing is that once we got to cruising speed, I noticed that we were able to maintain the exact same degree on both the bank one and bank two. And it would hold this for an extended period of time. So while I'm cruising, I'm going like 40 miles an hour here, and you can see that we're the same on both bank one and bank two. And so to me, that's definitely an improvement, because before I was never able to maintain a straight line like this. And in this case, I'm able to do it over and over again, maintain the same degree. Again, look at this, 22 degree on bank one and 22 degree on bank two. And so right now during cruising speed, we're able to maintain that. If I scrub a little bit forward here, let's take a look. Again, our scaling is correct here. So you can see 0, 0, 5, 5, 10, 10, 15, 15, 20, 20. And take a look at the graph here. Overall, it's following it pretty well. Now, what I do find interesting is that our blue line now is the one that looks like it's a little bit problematic. So take a look at our red line. You can see our red line is pretty smooth when we're coming down during the deceleration, and then when we're coming back up during acceleration. During this uptime, you can see that we have an issue with the bank one, in which it's almost trying to find its way to matching up with the bank two. Once it finally matches up, it seems to follow it pretty closely. Again, right here, we've gotten to cruising speed, and then we decelerated right here. And let me scrub a little bit forward here. Okay, so there's our deceleration, and our scaling just changed, so don't pay attention to that. Let me get to where our scaling is correct. There we go, there's our correct scaling. Again, we're looking over here at the numbers to make sure they match up on both ends. And again, like I said, we're seeing this again in where we have these sort of waves, but this time, unlike before the repair, it's not the bank two that's doing it, it's the bank one that's doing it. And so during acceleration, we'll see these kind of swings from the bank one, and our bank two is staying pretty steady. But then once it finds its place, it stays steady all the way through. Let me scrub forward here, see if we can find anything else. Again, don't let that fool you. That is the scaling. Look at the scaling on the side there. So I'm just going to zoom past that until we get to where our scaling is correct, which is right here. So take a look right here. Again, you can see our scaling is matching on both sides. And take a look at that. Our bank one is having trouble trying to keep up with our bank two. Now our bank two has a nice flat line, but our bank one is trying to figure out what's going on here. And in this case, it really couldn't until the deceleration came up. And then again, the acceleration happening here. So I'm gonna move forward. Again, take a look at that. Once it gets to where it finds it and we get to cruising speed, you can see that we're holding it steady on both banks and they're matching each other. Again, really awesome, because I was never able to achieve this before. I always had like a 5-degree difference during cruising speed, in which our bank one would be like at 20 and our bank two would be like at 16 or 15. And so just seeing this makes me really happy. But like I said, I don't really like what's happening with bank one. I think the way that it's reacting to the brand new part on bank two is that it's trying to keep up with it. I'm not sure if that's the proper way of explaining it, but essentially, I think that's really why they recommend replacing both of them at the same time. And I'm really curious how this would look if we had replaced both of them. Maybe, you know, we wouldn't have these crazy swings that we're seeing now. And so again, check this out. You can see our blue line here kind of jumping up and down, and then it starts to follow it pretty closely. Again, you can see how close it's following it right there during cruising speed, then deceleration. And then again, guys, the scaling here. So let me get past this part right here. Throughout the graph, you're gonna see that it's keeping up with it pretty nicely. And so to me, this is definitely an improvement. If you guys want, I can go back and show you the capture that we took before we did the repair. Again, that's going to be this one here. So let's go ahead and select our data PIDs, hit OK. You can see here where we first took off. And again, take a look at this, because before our blue line was not the issue, it was our red line, which is our bank 2. Take a look at the swings the bank 2 was making before we did the repair. Again, this is bank 2, and you can see how we have this big swaying motion, and it was never really able to keep up during cruising with the bank 1. And so let me scrub through this a little bit forward. Here's coming up to a deceleration, and you see this big sway right there. It comes down for the decel. Those are the types of movements that we were seeing before. Again, these big swings from bank 2, we're not seeing them on bank 2 anymore. We're actually seeing them on bank 1. Let me forward here a little bit. Check that out. This is during cruising. So at this point, I'm going like 40 miles an hour, holding the accelerator steady, and you can see that our bank 2 is jumping up and down, up and down, up and down, just trying to stay steady with our bank 1, which has created a nice even line across the middle there. Like I said, it's interesting to see the difference now. Our problem seems to have moved over to bank 1, and so now bank 2 is looking a lot better than bank 1 is. But again, this is what it was looking like before, and so we definitely have an improvement. All right, guys, so fast forward. It's now been about 3 weeks since the owner picked up the truck. I just got off the phone with him, and he's telling me that the truck is running great. So far, no issues, no check engine light, and so I feel pretty confident calling this a fix. Now, whether or not we're going to have an issue with the bank 1 in the future, I feel like that is going to eventually be a problem, and so I am anticipating that sometime in the near future it may actually set a check engine light for the bank 1. Now, the reasoning behind that is because, of course, the graph that we saw after doing the test drive and comparing it from the before the repair and the after the repair, and what we saw was that we actually had the graphs become opposite of each other. And so that was interesting, seeing that before doing the repair, we saw a lot of erratic movement from the bank 2 while the bank 1 was running pretty smoothly. But then after replacing the bank 2 magnetic retarder, we saw the bank 1 having those erratic swings and then our bank 2 being normal. So like I said, I'm not sure if this is really an issue of replacing just one side. I'm pretty sure replacing them both together would have probably resulted in a cleaner graph. However, like I said, each of these parts were around $1,000. And so not only was this a lot of money for the owner of the vehicle, this was also a lot of responsibility on my end, which is one of the biggest reasons I actually didn't want to fix the vehicle in the first place, because I didn't want the responsibility of making the decision to condemn this part. Misdiagnosing and guessing the wrong part when the part cost maybe $100 or $200 is stressful enough. How do you think I feel when the part costs $1,000? You have to be pretty damn confident in your ability to diagnose and troubleshoot faulty parts, especially when you're limited to what you can actually test on the system. Now, were there other tests that we could have done before condemning the part? I'm sure there probably are. Maybe some of you guys can drop some ideas down in the comment section. Now, there was something else that I thought of after the fact, a test that I think might have helped us out, and that would have been to look at the duty cycle signal and actually graph it on a line graph. And so with the lab scope, you can actually graph the duty cycle percentage on a line chart. And then what we could have done is probably compared that line graph to the data PIDs on the scan tool for the exhaust VVT command percentage. I think that would have been interesting to compare the two. Maybe it would have been useful to see whether or not they followed along with each other. But anyways, that was something that I thought of after the fact. The truck's been long gone. Maybe in the future, if it ever comes back for the bank 1, I might get a chance to do that. But like I said, if you guys have any ideas of some of the tests that I could have done, then please leave them down in the comment section below. Anyway, at this point, I'm gonna end off the video. Like I always say, I hope you found it useful, informational, educational, entertaining. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.